Hello and welcome to this tutorial on creating Hyper-V virtual machines by importing a CSV through PowerShell. So why would you use PowerShell for this? PowerShell is integrated into Windows and has a Hyper-V module which can easily be called here with import module Hyper-V. That's in, and it hooks straight in. It's the easiest way to manage Hyper-V without having a graphical user interface. I mean, for an example, to get VM, I know there I've got my one Zebo server which is off and has been off for a while, but I can manage it easily from there. I can turn it on, start VM, Zebo, there, Zebo server. And you see up here, all turned on and running. And if I want to stop VM, I can do stop VM, Zebo server. So, really basic example, but it opens up a whole host of opportunities for scripting the management of your Hyper-V environment. What would this script be used for? Essentially, it allows the bulk creation of VMs quickly. It requires you to fill out 2 CSV files maybe in Excel and just save them as CSVs. It's easier for you to look at straight away at what resources you're allocating if you're doing it in bulk. Obviously, if you're going through and doing maybe 50 virtual machines one after another and just going through like that, you quickly lose track of sort of how much resource of your hosts you've allocated to this. So I mean, by doing this, you can plan ahead. You can plan and see exactly what you're allocating to these virtual machines. So this is where the magic happens. We have at the top, we're just importing, well actually sorry, setting the variable of where the CSV files are. So it's essentially in my folder here, CSV import. So I have my 2 CSV files just there. After that, we're importing both CSVs into PowerShell and selecting the column headers on both files. The reason we have this special one here is we have to do a join, which I'll explain later on in the script. But essentially, what it's doing just there is creating a new sort of column header within PowerShell called VHD path. So it's almost like a ghost one here. And all it's doing is merging VHD location, so this part of the path here, and also putting on the name here as well. So it's essentially merging this column, or these 2 fields together on each one, but doing it within PowerShell. It could be done within here as well, but it's just less information for you to actually fill in when you're doing this, so yeah, it doesn't really matter to be honest. So yeah, and then let's snapping. Where's my other one? So we've got a big for each statement here. We're doing this essentially so it will go on a for each loop down each individual row of this CSV file. So it'll just keep going and going and going and going until it reaches the end and there's no more left. If we expand it out, you'll see it creates a new VM with a name, new VM name, so calls it that in this location, and then with second generation, I've done it as we're doing 2012 R2 machines, so it makes sense. And then essentially what we'll do is output a line here saying successfully created VM with my name XQT file 1. After that, we're going to go through and set the processes. So it sets the processes on this VM. So VM name obviously is going to be the current row it's working on, so the AD, the main controller. And it sets the CPU count to whatever's in the field here. So we've got it done as 2, and again we'll output a line. It then has to make a decision in this section here about whether or not, well, it's reading off your CSV file, so it needs to know whether or not to set it as dynamic or fixed RAM. So I've said one I want dynamic and one I want fixed and one I want dynamic. For it to do this property here, startup bytes, is actually only takes a numerical value in bytes. So you could work it out here if you wanted, but that's a bit long to be honest. So you have this calculation up here, which basically converts this into an integer by multiplying it by the gigabytes, and puts it in there. So I mean, obviously, if you just ran this thing, we just ran this and then saw what VMRAM is. So this is 2 gigabytes in bytes, which makes sense and is a lot easier than working out every single time. So essentially this first one is doing if, so it's checking to see if this field says dynamic or not. So, sorry, if it says fixed even or not. So obviously it does equal fixed, so it's going to do this section here, which is the if it's true section. So it's going to set the memory on my first VM with 2 gig of RAM, and it's going to have it's not going to have dynamic memory at all, so it's going to set that flag to false, and then write out this little return thing into the not return thing, that's not the word. Essentially, then it's going to return this line in the window and tell you obviously it sets static RAM to 2 gigabytes. If it's not fixed RAM and dynamic, it's the exact same thing. The only part that's changed is this flag here, which has gone to true instead of false. And that's really that, to be honest. Nice and easy. The next thing is the networking. So this section here, this column. So use the connect to VM network adapter. So notice for this VM connected to the switch name VMNIC, which I specified here. If you're not sure what your Hyper-V switch, virtual switch is called, you can literally open up a PowerShell window, go get VM switch, and I know that my switch name is here. If you really want to iterate it down, you can go select object name. It just gets rid of these two bits, the second and third column. So if you've got multiple ones, it might be something you want to go down the route of doing, but I've got one, so it doesn't really matter. Again, once it's done, outputs a nice little line here saying it's connected the VM to that switch. The final thing, it does an if statement to check if there is anything in this final column here, which is where you're specifying the image for it to mount. If this was blank, it would do nothing, as you can see here, it just carries on. If there is something there, it will add a VM drive. Essentially, that's just adding a disk drive to the virtual machine. So it adds the DVD drive to this VM, and then the path is the path to the ISO, which you specified just there. And then lastly, again, it writes out saying, I've mounted this ISO to this virtual machine. When that's done, it will, after all of this sort of process is done here, it will output a final line saying it's complete, it's finished with the virtual machine it's been working on. So we'd obviously know the last one was this one here, XQT file 1. So that bit is nice and easy. Okay, so the next section is, now we've got our virtual machines, we need virtual hard drives, which is this section here. So this now references the other CSV file we saw earlier. In this, obviously, we have the information we need, including what the virtual hard drive name is, the virtual machine name, and all the other stuff. There is a nice big for each loop, which means you could have, and it says generation 2 virtual machine, you could have 256 hard drives per VM if you wanted. In practice, I don't think that would really happen, but the option's there if you want to try around and play around with it. So yeah, so as you can see, I've got one OS drive and one data drive per virtual machine. OS drives are fixed, data is dynamic. So going over to my script, we first of all need to, the first section is actually create the virtual hard drives themselves. But again, like the RAM before, it needs to know whether it's dynamic or fixed. So similar sort of statement, it does a check to see if the value in these cells is fixed or dynamic. So the first one is if the value in there equals fixed, it will do a conversion like before, where it converts the gigabytes here into bytes. create a new VHD in this location. And so it's first going to go through and check if it's a dynamic disk or not. So what it's actually doing is checking here, say if the value in the fixed dynamic column, so in this case it says fixed equals fixed, then it'll do this section here. So we've got a conversion again like before in the RAM where we're converting even from gigabytes to bytes, and that's essentially it. And then we create the new VHD here in the path specified in the CSV file, which is just there. The size in bytes is VHD size, which we've just specified there, and then we're saying it's a fixed drive. And then again, nice little output telling you it's done. If it's not a fixed drive, which will basically be if it was anything else in here, or even blank if you wanted, it would create the exact same thing but with a dynamic drive instead. And then finally, after this sort of if and else statement, you just need to attach them to each virtual machine. So it's actually going, even though obviously we've got multiple virtual hard drives per virtual machine, it's just iterating. I've just realised I made a mistake actually. That should be there. Sorry about that. Oh no, didn't go through at all. Yep. Oh. Yes. Yeah. So, so adding these virtual disk drives, or virtual disks even, sorry, to the virtual machines. So we'll just go through, and for each virtual hard drive, it will attach it to the VM with this name, and the VHD is in this VHD path. I mentioned it earlier in the video. This, as you will see, isn't actually a column in here. That is because this special little section here comes from right up the top. So that VHD path down there is this sort of imaginary column we created when importing the CSV, which is actually the merge of this column and that column. So yeah, took a while to work that one out, but it works, so that's fine. And once it's done, you get write host, says it's successfully attached, and then that is it. So nice easy script, essentially, massively scalable, and I think we should probably show how it works. So let's minimize that. As you can see, I've still got my existing server here, but we can ignore that for the sake of ignoring it. We have our folders already. It should create the folders if they're not there. Okay, so let's clear the output of here. What I'll do as well, just so you can see it being created. Let's get rid of the preview pane. Let's open that in a new window. Okay, so we have got our VM folder and our VHD folder. So you'll be able to see them creating live. So, have our big script here, let's run. So straight away you can see here, we already have our virtual machines being created, so output's there. So now obviously virtual hard drives being created. So in my Excel sheet I asked for a 20 gig. Yeah, there we go, 20 gigabyte fixed disk, which is the one it's creating right now. Might take some time, depending what it's creating it on. Obviously, fixed disk is actually writing 20 gigs straight away to your disk, as you can see there. Whereas, if it's a dynamic disk, it will write probably about, probably about 4 megabytes, I think, from memory. And then it will dynamically expand as and when you sort of put data on it from within the guest OS. But yeah, let's fast forward until all these have been created. Okay, so that is all done, and as you can see, we actually had an error occur. So, why did that error occur? Why is it looking for XQT file 2? So we know it failed at add VM hard disk drive. So I know it's in the VHD section. We're looking at here, so it's trying to find that which it thinks is incorrect. So let's have a look at the CSV file, and yeah, sure enough, I wasn't paying attention earlier on, and put the incorrect server name in. So that was clever. Good thing is, obviously, we can fix it quite easily because we're in PowerShell anyway. So add VM hard disk drive, VM name, XQT file 1, path, XQT HV lab, VHD, and this is going to be file 1 underscore data. Bang. So that's all good. So as you can see in our VHD folder, we've got our 4 VHDs. So we have 2 fixed, which are here, the 2 20 gig ones, and 2 dynamics, which are these 2, which is all good. One level up and into the VM folder, we've got our virtual machine settings, which is all good. And if we have a look in Hyper-V, if we go on settings, yeah, that is perfect. So 2 gig of RAM, fixed memory, 2 virtual processors, DVD drives there. Got your 2. Yeah, we have got the 2 virtual hard drives. It's on the correct switch. Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. And if we have a look in here, again, so this one we actually set for dynamic memory. I don't know if you remember on wrong one. Dynamic memory, yeah, so XT41 dynamic RAM. So that's come through. That's come through correctly, which is excellent. Got our 3 drives, perfect, connected to the network, all done. So it's simple, and as you can see, that took probably about 3 minutes to do. If we're doing that through the GUI, so with 2 virtual machines, 4 hard drives, probably would have taken about 3-4 times as long. So obviously if you're doing this on massive scales, it's a good idea to do something along these lines, really. And just to prove it actually works, let's get the connection manager on. And yeah, so you can see it boots up straight away. So that is essentially it. It is that simple. Yeah, so summarize. All it is a PowerShell script which you essentially just need to populate 2 CSV files here, tell it the column headers, do a bit of magic to merge 2 of the columns together, leave it to do its thing with pulling all the different variables from the Excel sheets themselves, and that is it. You have your virtual machines. If you want to download this, go to the link below or even on the video, which I'll put somewhere around here maybe, with the link to a blog post with the code and CSV files in, so you can try at home or even in production. But if you're going to do it in production, be very careful with your settings, because obviously as you saw, it's quite easy to make a mistake if you're not paying attention on here, as that example is there. So yeah, if you have any feedback, please comment below, like, subscribe, do whatever. But yeah, hope that helped, and I will speak to you soon.